everyone, welcome to the podcast. I'm Dan Alden and Senior Pastor of Reality Church here in Perth, Western Australia, and I'm so glad you've joined us to get a hold of this week's message. I really believe God wants to do something fresh and powerful in your life, and I'm praying that this message you're about to hear will be a catalyst for that. So enjoy the message, and remember, Jesus is the reality you've been looking for.
It's so good, and it's a privilege again for me to be able to speak to you guys and to be able to close off this awesome series of confidence. Who's enjoyed this series? Yeah, and I've enjoyed it so much, and it's just been speaking to me. The call to confidence. Who loves a good underdog movie? Who's seen it? Rocky? Yeah. You gotta get the posters up? Yeah. The Karate Kid? These are like classics, right? When we see the underdog, no one expects the underdog to win, do they? No. But they rise out of obscurity, and against all odds, they win the battle. They're victorious. It's super inspirational when I watch an underdog movie. I just want to find a staircase to run up and do the Rocky, the Rocky jump. Yeah, Kev's like, yeah, I've done that a few times. Yeah, But I love the underdog movie, but you know what I love just as much? The underdog movie, the sequel to that movie. Ha! Yeah, who's seen a good underdog sequel? And they've just won the battle. They just came out victorious. So technically, they're not the underdog anymore, right? So what do? So what happens is, in the sequel, the ex-underdog faces a terrible, crushing defeat. Yeah? You know that moment? Yeah? When they're just, they're the top of the game, but then suddenly they meet someone that's better. They meet a team that's better, and they get crushed. And their confidence gets ripped apart. Yeah. For the Mighty Ducks, woo! It was Team Iceland. Team Iceland. For Pitch Perfect 2, the Bellas were outperformed, outstaged by the Germans. Oh, the Germans. In Creed 2, Adonis Creed was beaten up, pulverized by the Russian. Just once, I wish that in Hollywood they'll make a movie where the American champion will get beaten by someone more, Asian. It's never happened, even the ping pong movie. The bad guy was an Asian. Come on, that's our game. I can imagine it. I'm gonna, send an email to a director like Spielberg. Come on, I'll pitch it. Imagine that scene when the Malaysian beats the American, and the Malaysian's like, "Hey man, hey, you lost, ha? You lost, man." Now we Malaysians, now we are the champions, my friends. And we will keep on winning till the end. Sound good? I'm going to pitch it. We all can relate to these stories. Why? Because it echoes something for us. Because, we go battles in life, don't we? Sometimes life happens and a situation comes and we just get trashed by it. We just get beaten. We just go, oh. And our confidence in that situation, it can get pulverized. It can get shaken up. It can get uprooted. So when that happens, what can we do? How do we, when we get overwhelmed by a situation, when our security, when our sense of control is stolen by that pain, by that experience, how do we get back to a place of confidence? How? Today's message is called The Confidence Comeback. Woo! The Underdog Sequel. That's the subtitle. Yeah, I love it. So I was thinking, when I watch these movies, how does confidence actually get displaced by failure and defeat? Or what happens to that person? What happens to that team? So in the movies, we see the characters, they start to struggle with this defeat. And do you know what happens? They start defining themselves by that failure. Yeah, you see that happen all the time. They struggle to see themselves anymore as the victors, as the champions they were. And all they can see is that momentous defeat. I mean, think of it. They haven't lost all their skills. They haven't lost all their talent. They haven't lost all their muscle memory. No, it's all still there. But they can't see that anymore because all they can see is that failure. When they look in the mirror, all they can see is defeat. That identification of that moment. You know, I think this is such an accurate depiction. I think that's why these movies resonate with us. It echoes us, doesn't it? Like sometimes when we get a blow, when we suffer a blow to our confidence, there is a loss of identity, I believe. We start to forget who we are. When we face a failure, a defeated situation, it's so easy to be consumed by defeat that we allow that very failure to define who we are. And I was thinking, how does that shift happen? How does that shift happen from an experience, a moment of failure, how does that shift happen and suddenly becomes the defining point of who we are, of how we see ourselves? See, there is a shift from basing our identity from factual reality, everyone say factual reality, to a perceived reality. All right, I'm going to walk through this with you. Can I have the next image up? See, factual, objective reality is fact-based, it's observable, it's based on truth. Yeah? Perceived subjective reality, they're based on feelings, our emotions. It's based on opinions. It's based on personal perspective. You know, I have a fear of lizards. I do. Not just any lizards. I'm afraid of naked lizards. Yeah. Is there one? There's one behind me right now, right? Is it looking at me? Yeah. You see, when I see these things, all the hairs on my arm and my neck just stand up. And I'll just react very loudly with lots of spins and twirls. She's laughing, my wife, because she's seen that happen. And she just sits back. She doesn't help me. She goes, ah. And we'll have guests over, and then they'll hear a scream in the bathroom. And they're like, oh, what's wrong with Leon? Did he fall over? He goes, no, it's just probably just a lizard. I'm afraid of lizards because, you know what? When I was a child, after school, I had a very traumatic event. Very traumatic. Came home from school, opened the letterbox, and this naked lizard, crawled up my arm, into my back, up my sleeve, into my back, down my back, out my pants. I felt so violated by this naked lizard. How dare he? And until this day, I have this fear that the naked lizard's going to do it again. Just 3 weeks ago, I'm not exaggerating. A lizard had planned its attack. As I opened the door, it collapsed down like Tom Cruise into my arm, onto my hand. Good thing my reflexes, I've been training to flick it off. You know, it doesn't help that I have a vivid imagination. You know, I always imagine these naked lizards in this room, this dark room, and they're plotting against me. You know, they're like, they're sitting in a circle. They're like, yeah, we get him when he's late because he's groggy. You won't expect it. Jimmy, what are you wearing? Do you like it? It's a vest. Why are you wearing a vest? We're naked lizards. You look ridiculous. Take it off. Okay, enough of the naked lizards. Where are you going with this? Let's go back to factual reality and perceived reality. Get away, lizard. Ugh. Go away. Okay. Right? So factual and objective reality. Next slide, please. All right. Factual reality. A lizard climbed up my arm and out my pants as a kid. Perceived reality. It's going to happen again. Lizards are out to get me. Factual reality. A beautiful girl gets told she's ugly by her classmates. It happened. Perceived reality. The girl, she looks in the mirror, and instead of seeing beauty and wonderfully made creation, she sees an ugly person. Factual reality. A young man suffers from a stutter. Perceived reality. He sees his world and he imagines that everyone laughs behind his back, so he keeps to himself and plays video games whenever, wherever. Factual reality. I suffered a moment of defeat, a painful defeat. Perceived reality. I am a failure. Can you see that? See, each person's perceived reality departs drastically from factual reality. You know, there's this quote, and I'm going to read to you, and I just got to share it to you. Can we have it up? Though our experiences are real, we are more than those experiences. The moment we define ourselves by our experiences, we have lost the way. Be informed by your experiences, but do not be controlled by them. Isn't that cool? Be informed by experiences, but don't let it control you. That is just so profound. See, life can sometimes hit us with pain and the pain of failure, and it hits us so hard that the defeat is so intense that it becomes a controlling force. When we allow our emotions and our pain from that experience, from that defeat, to gain so much territory in our hearts and our minds, you know what happens? It starts to distort the truth. It starts to distort what is true, and it starts to give us a false reality. A false view of reality, a false sense of who we truly are. You know, my wife, Geraldine, she's been studying counseling. She's been a few months in. And every now and then I'll hear, hey, they stole this from the Bible. As she reads, as she studies. This is a kingdom principle. And I love it, because then she sends me all these these quotes and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it is. And it's that cool, So, and anyway, there's this quote I want to read to you that says this: self-actualization is a theory in psychology. Self-actualization, in the counseling context, is a process of helping a person become who he or she truly is. Process of helping a person become who he or she truly is. How do we find our way back to who we truly are? How do we find the factual reality of ourselves and not have an identity that's based and controlled by our perceived reality, not controlled by our pain, not controlled by our failure and our loss? How do we navigate back in our lives and to see ourselves from the vantage point of truth? Now, firstly, we gotta ask the question: what is truth? How do we know what's truth? What is true reality? And we ask this question in a world that embraces your own subjective space. I remember when I was in art school, and I would have conversations with my peers, and we would talk about everything. And I always remember our conversations about God and about truth. And I would usually get this sort of response. Like, hey man, your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth, man. We all have different truths. What are you doing? Mind explosion. Stop it, okay? Are there many truths? Surely there has to be a basis. Surely there has to be a foundation that we can build our lives on. Surely. In John 14:6, Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. Jesus is the truth. You know, I once heard this said, truth exists only if there is someone who is trustworthy. The truth is an extension of someone who can be trusted. The truth exists because God is trustworthy. Yeah, I love what Mark Godfrey said a couple of weeks ago. He said, God is the bedrock of trust, right? A bedrock for us to trust. See, there is truth which upon we can base our life. There is truth. There is factual reality. Contrary to what modern minds think, that's all about data. But truth is not just mere information. Truth is a person. And that person is who? Jesus. Jesus. So the way we wrestle with the intense experiences of defeat in our lives, the way we find our way back to who we truly are, it's not a dry analytical study or observation and reflection of objective truth. Not a dry process. It is through a relationship with Jesus. An interaction with truth himself. See, to understand the circumstances with him who brings us clarity. To allow Jesus to be the lens of truth. For not only the events and stuff that happens in our lives, but the lens of truth to who we truly are. Have you ever met someone that they seem just stuck in their painful experience? The painful moment could have happened like years ago, but somehow for that person, it's as if it just happened yesterday. It's like that U2 song, stuck in the moment you can't get out of. Maybe you love it? You've got to get yourself together. You got stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. That's it. That's my singing for now. Stuck in the moment, you can't get out of it. See, they're stuck in this painful moment, reliving it every day. It's like what my kids do, which is gross. They're ripping the scab off when it's not ready. It's like reopen. Yeah, it's gross, but hey, it's like the wound, if you keep doing that, will never heal. Reliving it every day. So their pain and failure has become such a constant in their lives. It's become who they are. If you talk to these people and you realize that all you hear is their pain, all you hear is their failure, and there is no confidence left in their being. But then, have you ever met someone who has suffered the equal amount of pain, the equal amount of trauma and hurt and defeat, but yet somehow they've come out of it healed? Somehow they're stronger people? Same pain, same defeat. They could have been trapped in the rubble of their failures, yet they found courage and confidence to rise above their failure. They remember the pain, but they're no longer trapped in it. They have the scars of that experience, but the wounds have closed. It's healed. They may have suffered overwhelming pain and failure, but somehow you talk to them and you interact with these people and they're hopeful. They're optimistic. They have joy and they have confidence in life. How can there be such a huge difference, such a dramatic contrast between these two types of people? Even if the situation is similar, it's because they have different lenses of interpretation. They both have different ways of looking at their lives and themselves. So if someone has a lens of hopelessness, they will always see the situation as hopeless. But if someone has the lens of hope, no matter how grim their circumstance is, they are still hopeful. When we allow Jesus to be the lens of our interpretation, the filter for our lives, He who is truth will enable us to see truth in all situations. He who is truth will enable us to see ourselves for who we truly are. Jesus redefines our reality. You can say it with me. Jesus redefines our reality. When we choose to believe in Jesus as our Savior, we open our eyes to the true reality, which is God's reality. So let's look back to the slides. Next one, please. Now, factual reality now is based on truth. Our subjective reality is still based on our personal perspectives and feelings and opinions. But now our factual reality, we can see, based on truth, is based on who? Jesus. And our perceived reality is based on how we see our situation. Factual reality is based on the finished work of the cross. Our perceived reality is based on our behavior and experience. Amen? Can you see this? This is a redefinition of reality by Jesus for us. When we can see every promise of God as factual reality. And all the promises of God in the Word. Let's have a look. Next slide. Oh, this is some of them. I'm not going to read them all. But there's so many promises. They're all what? Factual. Truth. All right? We can see every promise. This is truth. This is fact. We can see everything God says, everything about who we are in Jesus as factual reality. Even when we don't feel like it. Even when we don't behave like it. Still remains factual reality. Even when our situation, our circumstance is opposite to the truth, still, His promises, what He says is factual reality. You know, everything that we are righteous, that we are sons and daughters, that we are masterpieces, that we are holy, that we are set apart, that we are His workmanship, that we have received abundant grace, and that we are made to reign in life, that His plans are to prosper us and not to harm us. Some of us can say, well, I mean, how can you say these are factual truth when I often don't see it with my own eyes? You see, God's reality often operates in the invisible. God's reality, you see, starts in the invisible realm before it enters into the visible. In Hebrews 11:3, says this, faith empowers us to see the universe was created and beautifully coordinated by the power of God's words. He spoke, and the invisible realm gave birth to all that is seen. The invisible realm gave birth to all that is seen. Just because we can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not true. In God's reality, it's true in the invisible just as much as it's true in the visible. In the very beginning of pregnancy, you know, like when you're pregnant, there's nothing visible that shows you're pregnant, but you're pregnant, right? Talking to the women, yeah. It's not visible, but you're still pregnant. When we have the lens of Jesus, when we see life as Jesus as the foundation of truth, we can live from God's reality. Even when we can't see it yet with our physical eyes. When we see our lives and everything around us based on God's reality, we can make choices and decisions based on His promises and truths. And when we do that, and we live life based on that foundation of His promises, the invisible reality will give birth. Right? It will manifest. It will break through into the visible, into our perceived reality. And we hear testimonies about this all the time. In Romans 12:2 says this, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and improve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." You know, I used to think when Paul said conforming to the pattern of this world, I thought he was talking about moral behavior. But if you look at the context of this passage, Paul was referring to not conforming to a way of thinking of this world. Not conforming to a way of thinking to this world. There is a different pattern of thinking based on a different understanding on the world. And I love this other translation of the same passage. It says this, "Do not," next slide please, "do not be shaped by this world. Instead, be changed within by a new way of thinking." Everyone say, new way of thinking. Then you'll be able to decide what God wants for you. See, when you renew your mind to this new way of thinking, a reformation happens. A revolution happens in how you think. Transformations happen within. And you know what? That transformation, your internal world becomes your external world. The truths of God that used to exist only in the invisible start manifesting in your visible reality. You will see a transformation not only in you, not only in your emotions and your behavior, but you know what? A transformation in the world around you. When you renew your mind to His truth, to His reality, an invasion takes place. An invasion of God's reality takes place. The water breaks. And the promises and the provisions of God will be birthed into your visible reality. Not just for you, but for people around you who desperately need to understand, to see, to receive God's reality. Who's excited? Who's just feeling, yeah, God, awaken me to this reality. I want it. I want to see life differently. I don't want to see life based on just how I feel and my pain and my suffering and my doubts and my fears. I want to see life based on you, Jesus. I want you, Jesus, to redefine my space. To the point where, you know, the way you see things, I want to see things the way, you know, miracles for God's reality, that's just everyday stuff. When we see stuff like, that's why some people can just operate in the supernatural, because they see in that plane. They operate in the invisible and they manifest and they break through God's reality to people, to themselves. Oh, wow. You know, I've been wrestling whether or not to share a part of my journey, which was very painful. You know, I was talking to God, oh, you know what, if I share this, it'll make people feel uncomfortable. And then God was like, really? Actually, it'll make you feel uncomfortable. Yeah. But you know what, I was just thinking back on my journey that, yeah, I'll share it because this is one time in my life where my confidence was ripped apart, shreds. And everything I've been talking about, it's as I look back, it makes sense. So I'll share the story with you. All right? You know, some of you may know this, but you know, back in the day as a youth leader in my 20s, I felt this call from God. You know, after receiving just incredible vision, you know, during a time of worship of His church, of His bride. And it was so bright. It was so intense that it just captivated everything about me. I was like, God, this is your church. It was made to shine. And I know that what was shining now, looking back, that light, that beam, that radiance was Jesus shining from his bride. That it was his crazy love, his radical, his grace, and just who he is, Jesus, illuminating all of his bride, all of his church, all of his people. And I was like, God, you calling me to be part of that, to see that happen, to bring that reality forth. Okay, what do you want me to do? So, and the journey for that started, and I stopped my work as a graphic designer. I went to Bible college. And then after that, it was great. I got married, and G joined me in this journey, and she equally sensed that purpose for her too, that journey. And we walked on this path. And I became part of a church staff in the previous church that I was in, and it looked good. It was good. And I was learning stuff, had many opportunities. But then, funny enough, there came a few years in, we started sensing that God wanted us to move on. That this season in this community was over. But you know what? I was stubborn. I was like, I didn't want to hear about it. It's like, what? I was pretty comfortable. I was, after all these years investing in this, that's ridiculous. No, I'm secure here. I know these people. No. It can happen here. So I shut that conversation off. I did. But then, a few, not long after, I was called to a meeting. And I had this conversation with someone who I deeply trusted, someone which I looked up to, someone that I saw as a father figure, someone that I was under in leadership. And I won't go into details what was said, but there was this one line that summed it up in regards to the journey I was in to the pastoral ministry. And it wasn't said out of malice. It wasn't said out of, to put me down. It wasn't. But it was just an observation. And this one line summed it up. Leon, plainly, I don't see it in you. I don't see it in you. And I was blown away. What? After all these years. And it was more like a heads up. It's like, I'm just telling you. No, I'm not to put you down, but I'm just telling you, I don't see it in you. I think that maybe I wasn't meeting certain expectations from this leader. Whatever the case. Those words and other words that just did not reflect who I knew God made me to be was spoken to me. And that was, whoa. That moment, it was a huge blow to my confidence. I will tell you that. And it went to a deeper level. It was a huge impact, a crushing to my identity. Yeah. The same way the boxer Adonis Creed lost his identity after getting beaten up by the Russian. This was a moment that crushed my soul and totally decimated how I saw myself. So this heavy conversation was a wake-up call. Okay, God, okay. It's time to move on. It's time to move on. And it was hard. It was gut-wrenching. It was difficult. I came to know Jesus in this church. It's all I knew. I see these people as my family, and I grew up with them. I've journeyed with them. And some of these people are the closest friends. But we knew we had to go. It's a different season. Leaving the church meant also leaving my position as church staff. And that was my primary income. That was our family's family income. And our second child was just born, and we just entered a mortgage. Oh my goodness. And after stopping my job as a graphic designer, my skill set was no longer relevant in the marketplace. I couldn't get a job as a graphic designer anymore. So the only job I could get just to pay the bills was to stack milk in IGA. Only thing I could do. It was a tough season. It was. Where the factual reality of God, that He loves me, that He has a plan to prosper me, it did not seem to match my perceived reality. It did not seem to match my experience right now. You know, His promises, it wasn't lining up to what my life. It was tough, man. Like those 40 minutes driving to Midland, you know, because that's the only place that will hire me. All the other IGAs are like, you're too qualified. But I knew a mate there goes, just work for me. 40 minutes in that drive, wow. You know, I went through despair on those journeys. I struggled with that pain of the situation. You know, I asked God, what's going on, God? How did things end up here? Where is your glorious church? How can I be part of it now? I can't see it. The idea of being back on the journey to the pastoral ministry, it was so far off. My goodness. It was hard enough thinking of finding a new church community. You know, and these voices, perhaps what the leader said to me was true. Perhaps I'm not cut out for it. Perhaps I failed. You know, I tried and, you know, maybe I just have to accept life as it is. You know, this is my life now. There was a scene in Creed 2 when Adonis was underwater in the pool. And some of you can remember this if you've seen it. He was in the pool. And out of the depths of his anger and his frustration and from his loss of his identity, he screamed out, "Ah!" underwater to mute that scream. "Ah!" You know, I had those moments in the car. Unfortunately, I didn't have water. Good thing there wasn't water in the car, but I had very, very loud alternative emo music from the 90s. I was raging against the machine. My pain, my suffering. Oh my goodness. But like any underdog story, any underdog movie, there needs to be what? A comeback moment. There needs to be a comeback moment. For Adonis Creed, it was finding his identity as a fighter again. He realized this was what I was made to do. I love to fight. This is who I am. Not that defeat by that Russian. No, this is me. And he started choosing and living from that place of who he truly was. And then we can see the training, you can see the bell. Yeah! That was for Adonis. See, if my confidence was dictated on and based on my situation, what I perceived at that moment, if my identity was based on the pain I was suffering through, I would have none. It would never have come back at all. No confidence. I can tell you that. But something inside me, I refuse. No. This cannot be the end of the story that God called us to. Cannot be. No way. God showed me that vision. I knew it. He spoke. He spoke that vision. He showed me that vision. There was an inner voice speaking within me. An assurance from Jesus that, hey, there is still more to your story. Hey, there is still more to your story. My true self cannot be defined by my pain, my failure, my situation. It has to be defined to who Jesus said I was, to how Jesus sees my life. He reminded me, hey, I still love you unconditionally. You're my son. You're my favorite. I've got your back. There is still great intention for your life, for your family. Look to me. Even you can't see it in the visible in your situation, look to me. I've got a plan. And it's a good one. It's a good one. Jesus was my comeback moment. He was the source of my confidence comeback. Hallelujah. So G and I renewed our minds to this new way of thinking. After battling through our struggles, hey, we started setting our eyes on God's reality, on His truths for our lives, to live and to decide and choose from that place, not from what we see, but to live from the invisible realm of His truths and promises for our lives, to believe in His reality. And as we live from that place of God's reality, church, you know what happened? Our wounds began to heal. Never thought it could happen, but it healed. Hope was restored. And confidence began to rise. And soon enough, we began to see God's promises, His truth, which already existed, start to break through into our lives, start to manifest, start to happen. And we have so many testimonies of all the things God accomplished for us by His grace. We just received, kept on receiving, supply of the supply. But you know what? Out of all those testimonies of God's amazing grace and provision coming to our lives, one of the most significant to us was finding a new community of faith. Someone's leaning in, going, so did you guys find a church? Tell me, stop making it right. You guys know the end of the story, but I'll tell you the bit before it, right? After a year of visiting many churches, and even attempting to settle to a church and just trying to make that relationship work. Have you ever been on a relationship and it's not right, but you're like, oh, I'll try. It's really awkward, but you're not really the one, but I don't know. Just try. Let's try it out. We did that and it was tiring. It was, So we gave up on that. This is not the one. And we after like a year of just visiting, and we have good friends coming to us on these little trips and just checking churches out and just, God, show us what. We almost gave up. We almost gave up, but G was like, I had enough. This is exhausting. I'm tired. I gotta handle it. So I was like, babe, it's okay. Come on. Remember, there's a plan for us to prosper. God has a church for us in the depths, that reality, in the invisible, that it's there for us. Let's just check this one last church. Come on, one last church. Which I don't know why, it just kept popping up on my my radar. And when we rocked up here and we were driving up the driveway, and I don't know, that was during renovations, and the billboard had all these flaps and it was all cut up and it was flapping in the wind. And the car park was just looked like abandoned. I don't know. It was like, oh, is this a scam? Are we gonna get mugged? Oh, should we turn back? She's like, let's turn back. No. I have a good feeling about this. I don't know why I have a good feeling about this. Come on, let's just do it. Let's walk in. Let's see what happens. He's like, it's always like an adventure. Let's see what happens. And I'm the brave guy, and she's like, oh, protect me, Leon. I'm exaggerating a bit. But when we entered into this space, we knew. This is it. And when Dan started speaking from his message, me and G were like this, hey, this is it. Sounding resonated, and God saying, this is your promise. This is your new home. This is where I call you to. Hallelujah. Wow. So this was a decision and determination made out of not what we just perceived, but it was based on God's factual truth, on His promise, on His plan to prosper us, to what we knew to be truth. It may have taken a while, but the visible reality in this area of our lives, it finally broke through. It finally aligned with the invisible factual reality that was already provided for us. Already, like echoing Dan and Diane, the seed was there. We were harvesting. Imagine if we had believed and acted on our pain and our suffering. We wouldn't be here. Imagine that. To settle for less. To settle for only what we could see with our visible, with our physical eyes. Where would we be? I'll hate to imagine. Probably still stacking milk in IGA. But, oh wow, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that Jesus woke me up, awakened me to his truth, to himself. I'm so glad we didn't give up on that journey God called us to those many years ago. That is the story. You see, when our vantage point is based on truth, no matter how hard life can hit you, when you have the lens of Jesus, no matter what happens, your confidence in life cannot be stolen. Nothing can steal away the truth within you. Who is Jesus? Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Who is Jesus?
Well, hey, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. We trust that God is doing something incredible in your life. And if you'd like to find out more about Reality Church, or you want to find out more about having a relationship with God, head over to our website, myreality.church, and you can find out everything there. If you're in Perth, we would love to meet you, so come join us at a service on a Sunday. You can find all the details at our website, myreality.church. We hope to see you soon.